Welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. The story of USAID is honestly one of the biggest stories that I've covered in the past 5 years or so that I've been doing this show. And so I covered this last night in last night's live show, and tonight's show will be another full show just focusing on what's happening with USAID and the unraveling of it and how deep it goes. And I've tried my best to put together a show for you tonight that just helps you understand just how massive this is. So, the pulling apart of USAID, the exposing of its operations around the world and within our own country have such serious ramifications. And my hope is that in tonight's show that you'll walk away from this thinking that you understand even a little bit more of this of the piece of this puzzle because it is such a big story because what we're talking about here is an agency, if that's what you call it. I think it's what you'd be calling it, that has a budget that is almost as much as all of our intelligence agencies combined, that has been used without congressional oversight to run massive deep state operations around the world and especially here in America. So this is going to be a mind-blowing show. Thank you for being here for it tonight. Before we do jump into that, though, I have one quick message for you. First off, thank you for watching on Rumble. If you're watching on Rumble, if you're not, I encourage you to. Rumble supports free speech. And the other thing is that, folks, with the stock market at record highs, are you confident that your portfolio can weather the next big downturn? Market corrections are quick and unforgiving, wiping out hard-earned gains in an instant. Smart investors know the key to financial security is diversification. That's why Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for Americans to hedge market volatility and protect their wealth with gold. Since 2010, central banks have been steadily increasing their gold reserves, and in 2024, gold prices soared over 25%. Gold is simple. You buy it, you own it, you control it. With over $2 billion in precious metals sales, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of investors diversify their portfolios with gold IRAs and physical gold. And now, when you open a qualified account, Noble Gold will gift you two 5-ounce silver America the Beautiful coins as a thank you. So please don't wait for the next downturn to catch you off guard. Visit goldwithseth.com or call 626-654-1906 today and see how easy it is to incorporate gold into your investment strategy. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or just call 626-654-1906. All right, so jumping into this story, I've got a lot of resources for you tonight. I've got a lot of videos, just a lot of information. I won't be talking as much. I'll just be showing you. And that's my goal. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm here just to show you a lot of real evidence about how our government, and when I say our government, it's not even our government anymore. It's this criminal network that is taking control of the American government and has been using the powers and the money, our money as taxpayers, for illicit and criminal activities around the world. So we're going to start with just a very short, a 3-minute, 40-second video of Mike Benz, who is walking you through basically explaining what is USAID. Because it's a great place to start because maybe you're just hearing about this story. And so this is a very good video to start with. And again, like I said, it is 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Let's go and get this going. And I'll full screen it for you as well.
So what is USAID? When people hear the name USAID, they focus on aid. They focus on thinking like it's humanitarian work. But aid is not actually in the name of USAID. USAID stands for the United States Agency for International Development, not aid. It's not a charity. And international development is simply capacity building. It is local and regional capacity building done across the whole world, i.e. internationally. The primal id in USAID, international development, is about capacity building of assets that can be used by either the Pentagon, the State Department, or the CIA for their own activities. So if you're the Secretary of State and you were asked by the National Security Council or the President to do something in a different country, overthrow their government, stop the passage of a bill in a foreign country's legislature, how would you do that? And the first thing that I said is you would look at the assets that already exist in the country. Do we need new assets in addition to the ones that we currently have, or are the existing assets, can they achieve this simply by giving them enough money, giving them enough resources, giving them enough training, giving them enough support? One of the main ways that capacity building would be financed would be through USAID. USAID would say that it's doing something, funding a hospital system, funding universities, funding civil society organizations, funding media institutions, funding independent media in the region. Sorry, there's something in my eye. Independent media in the region on USAID payroll. And those institutions, those assets, would then be bigger and more powerful and more capable more capable of serving the State Department's goal, aka advancing U.S. national interests. USAID has a bigger budget than the State Department, over $50 billion. It is a bigger budget than the CIA. The entire intelligence community only has about 72 billion. So that's the CIA plus the 16 others. And USAID has a bigger budget than the CIA and is almost the size of the entire intelligence community combined. That is how important USAID is to American statecraft. It is an intelligence community, a State Department, and a Pentagon assistance organization rolled into one. I just copied this from the USAID website. USAID carries out U.S. foreign policy, advances U.S. national interests by promoting broad-scale human progress. At the same time, it expands stable, free societies, creates markets and trade partners for the United States, and fosters goodwill abroad. The operative phrases here are carries out U.S. foreign policy. This is not charity work. This is not aid. This is cynical, self-serving purposes. And what is it seeking to do? Free societies, open societies. Why does USAID want other countries to be open societies? Because that's how you get the influence in. If a country is a closed society, they're closed off from USAID influence. We cannot capacity build our assets there. Closed societies box USAID out. China is a closed society. That is why we have not been able to topple the government of China, despite having tried for 100 years now almost. We have not been able to topple Putin from Russia. Why? Because Russia is a closed society. Like China, they kicked USAID out. It is not an open society. And so the USAID can't just take over their entire media ecosystem by funding 100 different media propaganda outlets in the region to sway hearts and minds. And remember, that's what this is. It's hearts and minds and cash. That's what soft power is. They call it hearts and minds work, but it's cash that does the moving of those hearts and minds, especially of the leaders of the movements.
So I thought that was a great overview of USAID or USAID. And it's crazy because you would think, oh, USAID. Oh, okay. So it makes sense that the US is helping countries around the world. And so our taxpayer dollars are going towards, building roads in Africa or, helping to keep people safe from malaria and mosquitoes in South America. But unfortunately, like a lot of things that we're seeing now, it's just a guise. It's just a cover up. And that's what they do, right? The road to hell, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. It's the idea that, oh, that must be good. That makes you not want to look deeper into it. Now, he mentioned though that the USAID has a budget of roughly $50 billion, which is almost the equivalent of all the intelligence agencies combined. So think about the power that lies here. But I want to hone in on the CIA specifically because the more you research this, the more you see that the CIA is at the center of so many of these illicit activities around the world, from the drug trade to color revolutions, regime changes, political assassinations. The list just goes on and on and on. So I have another video for you from Mr. Mike Benz. This is an interview that he just did in this past day or so, where he's talking about how, and he posts this on his Twitter or his X, He says, when a rogue cell at the CIA wants to do something dirty, but they don't think the president will approve, they can just walk right over to their friends at USAID, who can then run the op without a presidential finding required for the CIA. So watch this little clip. It's 1 minute.
That's because USAID is one of the most disturbing organizations in the entire federal government. It may rank number one, in fact. USAID is under the cloak of being a humanitarian aid organization designed to advance U.S. foreign policy, is assigned the dirtiest tasks that the State Department can't get caught doing, and that used to be done directly by the CIA. But USAID is able to act as essentially a covert operations division in the way that the CIA used to, except it's not even bound by the requirement of a presidential finding to authorize a covert operation that the CIA does, which is why what you've seen for the past 2 decades is that most of the international scandals involving spycraft have had to deal with USAID rather than CIA. And if you understand the CIA's history with money laundering, you'll begin to get a glimpse at the size of the problem with USAID and why they won't let either congressional oversight or DOJ see their books.
Absolutely astounding. Now, it's important, though, to understand that one of the key functions of these operations in general are the ability to control the public perception. Now, if you've looked into something called Operation Mockingbird before, it was literally a CIA operation that was used to control the public narrative through infiltration of the media. And this is where it gets very, very important because it's easy to think that USAID is focused on other countries, regime changes in other countries. And as an American, you might think, well, okay, if the CIA is running these corrupt operations or USAID is running these corrupt operations over in Uganda or Bolivia, it doesn't really matter because it's not here, in America. But actually, and this is really the most shocking part of this, is that a lot of this stuff has been focused on you and on me. So I've now got another video for you, which is a magnificent little short video that was put together by Mickey Willis that was in his most recent Plandemic film that walks you through and explains the role of the CIA within the Operation Mockingbird and how the media is used against us. And then we're going to take a look at the very, very damning findings that people have been discovering about the amount of money that USAID is funneling into our own media here in America. So this next video, I'm going to full screen it for you, and it's about 8 minutes long or so, but it's so well done that you're going to be glued to it. Mickey Willis is, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant filmmakers out there, and I'm very lucky to call him a friend. So I'll go ahead and play this for you. He calls it The Media. So check this out.
Since the invention of the printing press, there's been a battle to control disseminated information. In the early 1900s, oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller took control of every newspaper and news editor of his era. He became America's first billionaire, paving the way for the power-hungry ever since. Thus began the gold rush for the modern world's most precious resource, the narrative.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
During a Senate committee investigation, it was revealed that the CIA had been conducting a covert operation to infiltrate and control U.S. media. They called it Operation Mockingbird.
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Over 3,000 CIA contracted and trained operatives were placed in key positions within top media outlets. Posing as editors and journalists, these well-paid actors never dared to question the effect of their lies on the world beyond their cozy studio.
How often does the CIA manipulate the media in this way?
It goes beyond your wildest imagination. Setting up student organizations so they could draw radical students in. 5,000 university professors co-opted to help the CIA manipulate people's minds. Journalists in the U.S., including big-name journalists, co-opted to function routinely to help the CIA put out stories and biases to the world.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will.
It's a great brainwashing process to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations, I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
So how do we know that Operation Mockingbird still isn't in effect? Well, we don't.
It was the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that opened the door for predatory corporations to monopolize the industries of print and broadcast.
This bill protects consumers against monopolies. It guarantees the diversity of voices.
Today, a handful of corporate empires own and control the vast majority of everything you read, hear, and watch. From the biggest movie studios, television and radio networks, newspapers and magazines, to the vast universe of internet news and entertainment sites.
Amazon has transformed its operations in response to COVID-19 to protect employees and keep packages flowing.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy while still delivering those packages to your doorstep. The company is keeping its employees safe. Keeping its employees safe. The company is keeping its employees safe. Millions of Americans staying at home are relying on Americans staying at Amazon.
And that is how it works. It's like a house of mirrors, where you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, except it's distorted.
There's an industry that is paid to go after and target journalists, whistleblowers, and inundate our consciousness and the images we see to try to ruin, destroy, or smear the idea that they don't like or the person who's delivering it.
You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press, so they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
News personalities are not the only high-paid actors to serve the propaganda machine. Most late-night talk shows are owned by the same corporate overlords and thus follow the same script, only laced with a laugh.
Our main story tonight concerns conspiracy theories.
Last Week Tonight with John Oliver featured a skit entitled Coronavirus Conspiracy Theories.
It's like the claim that the moon landing was faked.
First thing to note here is that Mr. Oliver opens with commentary about conspiracy theories that are completely unrelated to coronavirus. This is a standard tactic used by propagandists to set a tone so that anything that follows will be seen through the lens of absurdity.
Plandemic, a pseudo-documentary filled with a hodgepodge of conspiracy theories.
Mr. Oliver then does his best to debunk Dr. Judy's claim that she was arrested but never charged with a crime.
She was absolutely criminally charged.
This was not an oversight, but a blatant lie. Prior to the taping of this episode, Mr. Oliver had the official arrest documents that clearly prove that Dr. Judy was never charged with a crime. Mr. Oliver then attempts to debunk the idea that a beach, aka nature, holds any value in boosting our body's natural immune system. Instead of challenging the point with science, he kills it with a smear.
Everything that you just said is insane.
Television is not the truth. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
absolutely powerful. Absolutely powerful. Now, when Mickey put this out, he probably never imagined, or maybe he did, that there would be a discovery that we're going through right now that literally shows the paper trail of this exact operation. Literally. Now you'd think, wait, aren't there some sort of laws that protect? This is America. Aren't we protected from propaganda from our own government? Well, there actually was a law. It's called the Smith-Mundt Act. And I'm going to pull up another story for you on that. This was back in 2012. This was published, I think it was in 2013. The Smith-Mundt Act was overturned under Obama. Now, this is actually funny enough. This is a BuzzFeed story saying that congressmen seek to lift propaganda ban. That's interesting. So it says, propaganda that was supposed to target foreigners could now be aimed at Americans, reversing a long-standing policy. Now, one thing that's important here is that, as you saw with Operation Mockingbird, they weren't not doing this because there was some act. However, the act probably gave us some sort of legal protection if it could be proved. But that act was overturned under Obama, basically saying that, you know what, it's okay for the government to use propaganda against its own American people. So I'm going to read just a little bit here. It says, an amendment that would legalize the use of propaganda on American audiences is being inserted into the latest defense authorization bill, BuzzFeed has learned. The amendment would strike the current ban on domestic dissemination of propaganda material produced by the State Department and the Independent Broadcasting Board of Governors, according to the summary of the law at the House Rules Committee's official website. It says the tweak to the bill would essentially neutralize two previous acts, the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act in 1987, that had been passed to protect U.S. audiences from our own government's misinformation campaigns. So why, under Obama, would they overturn the act that was set in place to protect we the people from our own government using propaganda against us? Maybe because our own government is using propaganda against us. Now, getting into taking a look at the findings of what's been uncovered with USAID, let's look at the paper trail. Let's look at the actual receipts. Because what's happening right now, especially over on X, is that there is this massive discovery process. It's almost as if every person that's using X just walked into a crime scene and they're just sharing stuff left and right. Oh my gosh, look what this money is going to for here, over there. So what I've done is I've compiled a handful of information showing you exactly how our own government is funding the media institutions that you and I at some point in our lives probably trusted. 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I trusted the New York Times. Like, okay, it's a paper of record. It's the gray lady, right? All the news that's fit to print. So let's go ahead and take a look at what are we finding out with this. Okay, so for one, Thomson Reuters, which runs Reuters, which is one of the most major and significant newswire services. So Reuters and AP, they feed stories to a lot of the other press. So you might be looking at your local newspaper and under the byline, it says Reuters or AP, right? So this is the news dissemination hub, Reuters and AP. So listen, look at this. It's the U.S. government caught funding large-scale social deception through Thomson Reuters Special Services. So literally, let me see if I can find the exact screenshot here to show you. Okay, this is a search of the recipient of money through USAID. $9 million went to Thomson Reuters Special Services, which is a subset of Reuters. It's still part of the overall company of Reuters, not necessarily directly tied to their specific news agency, but it's under the umbrella. Okay, so $9 million was awarded for, look at this, active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception. And it was a definitive contract, meaning that it was a real contract. It wasn't a proposed contract. It was a real contract. So looking at what Mickey Willis just showed us, looking at what Mike Benz has been teaching us, And then looking at the fact that we're now seeing the receipt that our own taxpayer money was paid to one of the world's largest news agencies and news corporations for literally active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception, aka brainwashing the public. And it gets worse. So AP, what about AP, you say, right? AP is also the Associated Press. I mean, they're the benchmark standard for guidelines. Look, I worked in the news industry for a decade. I'm very familiar with these companies. Okay, let's look at AP. Okay, well, here's another post. The Associated Press, independent but funded by the government. Turns out it's not just Politico. The Associated Press, AP, isn't just reporting the news, it's cashing checks from Uncle Sam. At least $19.5 million in government contracts, mostly from the State Department and the U.S. Agency for Global Media. In the past few years, AP has pocketed over $619,000 from the feds, 87% of it straight from the State Department. So when AP spins the narrative, just remember they're getting paid. You weren't supposed to notice. And these are the actual receipts showing these transactions, showing how much money was given to AP. Now, continuing, what about the New York Times, right? I would say New York Times is probably the single most influential news media in the world. It's that influential. It's what sets the tone on so many things, right? Here's a post, or again on X. The U.S. government gave the New York Times tens of millions of dollars over just the past 5 years, despite paying relatively little money to the New York Times in the years preceding 2021. For instance, in August 2024, the U.S. government awarded $4.1 million to the New York Times. The bulk of the funds came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services at $26 million, followed by the National Science Foundation at $19 million. And here you can see, if I can pull this up for you, this graphic here, you can see it's hard to, I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see there on the chart, right? This is the funding going to the New York Times. And you can see right around 2020 is when a massive amount of money started flowing from the government to the New York Times. What happened in 2020 that would have caused the government to shove millions and millions of dollars to the New York Times to influence the narrative there? Oh, maybe it was that COVID pandemic. Maybe it was some sort of big psychological operation, and they needed the media to be in lockstep. It continues. Look at this. So the government funded this good post from Steve Gibbs on X. These are all New York Times headlines. The Constitution is sacred. It is also dangerous. Is the Constitution obstructing American democracy? The Constitution is broken and should not be reclaimed. Let's give up on the Constitution. MAGA turns against the Constitution. The U.S. lacks what every democracy needs. We had to force the Constitution to accommodate democracy. This is the story of how Lincoln broke the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution won't save us from Trump. Now, a lot of folks would say before, oh yeah, the New York Times, they're more liberal slanting and, whatever. But now we know that they've received massive amounts of money from our own government to push out articles like these. Now, what's interesting is that Elon Musk has now weighed in on this, saying here, New York Times is government-funded media, right? And that post is now gotten millions and millions of views. So again, federal records show the U.S. government has sent the New York Times over $50 million since 2021, despite much lower payments in previous years. The biggest spender, and again, he goes through the exact money detail, asking though, what exactly is all this taxpayer money being paid for? Continuing, okay, it was Politico that maneuvered to have the Hunter laptop story banned and everyone discussing it censored. So if you remember that, right before the 2020 election, when the Hunter Biden laptop story came out, when a lot of big-time social media accounts were canceled because of reporting on it, that this was, in my opinion, one of the most significant examples of election interference, which was taking a story of the Hunter Biden laptop, which was going to be coming out weeks before the 2020 election between Biden and Trump, and burying it and slandering it and saying it was Russian disinformation. right? So it says this guy says it was Politico that maneuvered to have the Hunter Biden laptop story banned and everyone discussing it censored. Politico peddled the illegal Supreme Court leak that led to the near assassination of multiple Supreme Court justices. And now we find out the regime was funneling tens of millions of dollars of our money to Politico. Here's a post from Liz Wheeler. The Politico scandal is worse than you think. It's not $8 million that Politico received from USAID. It's $34.3 million that the Politico has received from the federal government. Here you go. Politico LLC, total award amount. It goes through all the details there. All right, showing that they received $34 million. Now, what's interesting is if you look at what is the effect of this, if you recall back to the video I showed you from Mickey Willis, where he showed the clip of Nancy Pelosi saying, oh yeah, we manufacture the story, we send it to media, they run the story, then you can quote the story. And this is, it seemed like it's this very, very concise thing that they know how to do. So here's a guy named PDB who says, and this is another example, it's not just about pushing propaganda. Actually, it's not just about the newspaper saying, hey, masks are good, or, this is wrong, or the COVID lab leak theory is a lie. They can also use the media to control businesses, to open up investigations. So PDB is a guy that launched an organic baby food product, the formula that he was working on bringing in the United States. Now here he says, the New York Times wrote an article claiming my formulas were all unregulated and illegal, and a week later I was raided by them being not the New York Times, by the federal government. So the New York Times wrote a hit piece, which then opened the door for the New York Times. So here Ian Miles Chung says, seems pretty interesting, doesn't it? They feed a story to the New York Times, the New York Times publishes it, and then they do the raid citing the story as evidence. And PDB says, yes, I was screaming this at my legal team 4 years ago, and they called me crazy. Now, continuing, because this, now I got another video for you, which I'll kind of set up into, but this extends far beyond the propaganda and brainwashing aimed at not only people around the world, and not only USAID seeking and gaining influence or starting media companies around the world, but also here in America. But it goes much further than that. Let's talk a little about human trafficking. So here I have a trailer from a film by Ryan Matta, who I'll be interviewing actually quite soon. But I'm going to play this trailer. It's a 4-minute trailer that starts to unpack the role of USAID and human trafficking, and specifically child trafficking, because this is where it goes even deeper. So I'll full screen this for you because it deserves it. And let me go and play this for you. 1 second here. Here we go.
It was USAID that I fear much more than the CIA, because the USAID is how CIA gets shit done.
USAID is clearly in the job of trying to bring about regime change. It has secret bank accounts, shell companies.
USAID gets $50 billion a year in U.S. taxpayer money. That's a larger overt fund than the CIA has.
USAID perhaps is the new CIA.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably.
This is not just about over there. This is about here.
They have a process, a system by which they destroy other nations, and they use that same process and system in order to destroy the United States.
It's a plot against our own people.
America, what if I told you that the United States government was acting like the world's Gestapo, using organizations like USAID under the pretense of humanitarian aid to topple governments, install politicians, and orchestrate regime changes in third world countries?
I disagree with that as somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat. Yeah. Not here, but, other places.
These are places that are practically entirely run at this point by the CIA and the U.S. State Department, which is, of course, a CIA front.
USAID provides most of the money.
This isn't a giveaway.
The State Department provides the policy vision.
This makes a difference to people's perception of us.
tricky endeavors, whether it's fighting terrorism,
Al-Shabaab groups in USAID camps,
or narcotics.
Joe Biden's State Department is commanding the Taliban to keep the opium flowing.
Or oppression or resistance to governance.
Those USAID trucks were stopped at the border to Venezuela with fully automatic weapons.
All of those things.
I don't think that's humanitarian aid.
What a difference that makes.
And if we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
Guatemala. What if I told you that USAID, the State Department, and the CIA created a fraudulent political party and then used that illegitimate party to rig the 2023 Guatemalan election so they could install a list of CIA-controlled politicians who would continue to allow them to run the world's largest child trafficking network out of Guatemala?
Nothing to do with that. Correlation, not causation. That is absurd.
They didn't deny it, which means that they admitted it.
This is no question, a political shocker in Guatemala.
The U.S. government, the Biden administration, helped cover up voter fraud.
Why Guatemala? Why not some other country?
Guatemala is concerned about child trafficking, the NGOs that are trafficking the children.
Jill Biden was the chairman of the board of Save the Children.
You guys just raided Save the Children.
Guess who stepped in? The State Department, U.S. Embassy, and USAID. Another coincidence?
America. What if I told you that DHS, under the direct orders of Alejandro Mayorkas, would create a public-private partnership with Mexican cartels, and that HHS, under the direct orders of Xavier Becerra, would create a public-private partnership with NGOs like Save the Children and Southwest Key Programs. And in this quasi-public-private partnership, they would use your tax dollars to fund the world's largest international child trafficking operation.
As to whom we know where they are, that is outside the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security.
This is nothing but lies. Nothing but lies.
Secretary Mayorkas, he acts like none of this ever happens.
It's his policies that caused over 500,000 of children being smuggled in this country.
And he also knew who to blame.
HHS places those children.
That's on you.
Was that a question to me?
Are you familiar with the sponsors that utilize a strip club as an address?
You shrug your shoulders and then send another batch of kids out to sponsor.
Human trafficking bust at an egg farm. Federal prosecutors call it modern-day slavery.
Of course, we investigate cases of trafficking.
Another lie.
So there you go. I'm honestly almost speechless when you look at the scale of this. Now, similar to what I showed you with Mickey Willis, Mike Benz, and then we looked at the receipts for it. There's only one tweet I need to pull up to show you the receipts for this. This is a tweet by Cernovich. Okay, there's a website called the Data Republican where you can go and do federal grant searches. And you can actually search for the money that the federal government is giving to all kinds of things. So if you go on there and you say, run a search, he says, run a search of grants issued for unaccompanied children, right? Which is very, very, very commonly trafficked children. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. He says, God have mercy, right? Here is a federal grant search for unaccompanied children. Our government has paid over $6 billion towards this. $6 billion. A lot of it being our own taxpayer money that we are funding. That the government is raising our taxes. They're taking money out of us, out of the pockets of hard-working Americans like you and I, people that are struggling to get by, working 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table and to heat their apartment or wherever they're living. The government is coming after them. They're taking their money and they're sending into programs like this. There you go, $6 billion. $6 billion, $36 million that were spent just in just on unaccompanied children. So when you put the whole thing together, this is massive. And look, I've been doing the show for going on 5 years now, and I've been trying so hard to expose the deep state, to shine a light on the corruption in our world, the corruption in our own government. Now, look, not everyone who works for the government is evil. There's still a lot of good people there. However, NGOs, the philanthropic organizations, the media, big tech, and this is even getting into the censorship industrial complex, the big tech and looking how much money is going towards that. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But what's so significant is that right now, the entire deep state is starting to be exposed. Now, again, like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg because the funding of USAID is, I think, roughly 1 or 2%. It's a tiny amount. We haven't even talked about the military industrial complex, or like I covered in last night's show, the $21 trillion that Catherine Austin Fitts and a team of researchers found that was missing. Our government has been siphoning so much money away from we the people, and not just using it to line their pockets, but using it for criminal and illicit activities, using it to fund propaganda against its own people, to fund regime change around the world, to fund regime changes in America, to overthrow a sitting president, to steal an election. This is all coming from these organizations. And so this is why this story is so significant. Now, what's interesting is that as Trump is coming in and cleaning things out, just in the past 24 hours, the CIA is now offering buyouts to every spy as it works to remake the agency. So it says intelligence officers received a deferred resignation offer similar to that of other federal employees that received theirs last week. So what this tells me is that under Trump, they're gutting the CIA, and they're giving all these people an opportunity to leave before they go in there and clean it out and fix it up. Now, I hope it's used for good. I'm concerned about any large agency. I just am. I can't say that I have a lot of hope in the current administration, and I have a lot of hope in Elon Musk. There's a lot of things, a lot of red flags. So I'm still being very vigilant, and I'm still trying to look at every single action to make sure that it's in alignment with the Constitution. But this is a little bit of positive news that they're gutting the agency. So I'd love to see that more. I'd love to see the same thing happening with the IRS, which hopefully they get rid of the IRS, because they lose their ability to take all this money and funnel it into USAID, though I doubt it's going to be happening the same way anyway now that Trump is taking a look at these things. But I hope that this show, and I tried to be as concise as possible. I told you at the beginning, I had some good videos and a lot of research. I tried to be concise, not put in my own narrative. I'm just trying to paint the picture to you of how corrupted our agencies have become, our government has come. And unfortunately, it's come at a cost of all of us, all the people that are struggling to put their kids through school or whatever it is here in America. Look how much money these criminals have stolen from us. And so when you hear plans about Trump kind of, I think, building 30,000 more beds down at Guantanamo, or the president of El Salvador saying, you know what, hey, look, we have this massive prison system. We're open to taking American people that are convicted down to their prisons. Maybe we're going to see some massive action in terms of actually bringing justice. I would hope to see that, and I know that you would too. But my hope is that the narrative that I put together for this particular show starts to help you understand the massive world that represents what the deep state really is. And this is what we're up against. Like, this is what's been against us. It's been against me, right? I was an independent journalist, at the beginning of 2020, when my first video went out that Trump shared the plot to steal America. I was targeted. I'm sure I'm on some lists. I'm sure I was. And hopefully now I'm not anymore. But this is so massive. And I'm gonna keep my coverage on this very strong, because this is such an important thing. Because look, the single most important outcome of anything that I can do or anything you can do is to have more of our fellow Americans understand this system for what it is. Because all of the money and effort and energy put into brainwashing the public that's what's enabled them to keep this hidden for so long, is because people don't even look at it. And so for those of us that are trying so hard to help our fellow Americans see the corruption for what it is and to break free of it and demand change, This is a golden opportunity that we have in front of us. And so I hope that if this video was powerful for you, please, please, of all the videos I've done, this is the one. Share this video. Get this video out to as many friends and family as you have. I purposefully did not make this political. It's not about left versus right. It really isn't. Because if you look at what I showed you so far, I can tell you that the USAID has been funded in part of by a lot of Republicans as well. It's not just that it's just the left. Like I hate that mentality of like, oh, it's the left, it's the demon rats. No, it's the uniparty. It's a criminal cabal that has controlled both parties of our government for a very, very long time. And what you saw in the show tonight is what they've been doing to us. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And so as more of this information comes out, I will continue to do these shows and do my best to explain all this information to you, pull together these narratives so that you can be better educated and you can further educate your friends and your family, your church groups, whatever people you have around you, because we have to get, the goal is this whole left-right divide, we have to overcome that. We have to come together as we the people, standing up against a corrupt government and demanding change. And we the people taking control again of our country. Because I want a country that my little girls can grow up in and have freedom and have a constitution that protects them. That's what I want. I want to create a country that has a beautiful future in it, where we're not being robbed, where a father that's working as a painter can support his family and own a house. Like that's the America that I want us to get back to. And I'm so grateful that you've been along on this journey with me, because I think that we're doing it. Because again, if you go back to that little video I showed you from Mickey Willis, the most important thing is the narrative. It's the most important thing for the deep state to maintain its control is controlling the narrative. And that's breaking right now. So let's together break it as much as we can. So again, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're following me on whatever channel you're on. Make sure you're following me to get updates. Check back again. I'll be having a lot more content coming out again. Please help share this video if you can. It's so important. And also, let me know in the comments. I read almost every single comment on all the platforms. I love it. I love seeing your feedback. I don't always get time to respond. But let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? What's your opinion? Am I missing something? Am I wrong about something? Did you share a video that had a profound effect on one of your friends? I love hearing that information. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been such an honor to be in front of you, and I will continue fighting even harder in this fight to wake up and unite this country, because that's what's going to build a better future. So take care and God bless.